Alright, so now that we have the skin done, let's get started with the hair. And the reason why I'm not starting with the eyes is because I don't want to mess it up. Yeah, I know I say, oh, don't treat it like your, yeah, kind of treat it like your baby, but don't treat it like your baby. But I'm just putting in the hair just because I like it. And also just because I don't want to mess up the eyes just yet. So let's just get started on that. Now, I imagine her hair to be kind of like a brownish gold, almost kind of like a corgi. So I'm going to go ahead and do something like that. So what I'm going to do first is, once again, I'm going to make sure that the water is, sorry, not the paper is nice and moist so that we can blend easier. And because your skin layer is pretty much all dry, you don't have to worry about that too much. So just do it around the hair. I'm not doing it around the ears or the ear fluff because I want that a bit more separate. So if you can see a little bit of glisten onto your paper, that means it's pretty wet. So, but don't worry about that too much. Alright, so now that your now that your paper is properly wet, we can go ahead and put in your light coating of brown. So I'm going to be using the same 197. I'm going to put a nice coating of that, just about like that, and then I'm going to lessen it. I'm going to make sure it's not that potent, and then I'm going to just draw in or paint in the colors. So in this case, I'm also going to be marking where the highlights are going to be, and that's a simple process. So you can just see that I'm changing the shapes. I'm kind of like making them kind of sharp here. I'm leaving some areas with white. And make sure it's continuing to be nice and moist, or else your hair will look really weird like this. So just keep adding water and keep pulling out the color in the brush. So don't worry about the exact shape of your hair. Just worry about just getting some highlights in. So what I mean by that is the shape of the highlights can be whatever shape that you want. It doesn't have to be, super pristine or anything like that. Just make sure that it's there, and then we can always refine it later. So this is what it looks like so far. We can just continue on that path. And make sure that it's still wet. I'm actually going to make this area highlight here, because I don't want this I want this to have a little bit of a cute white spot. So I'm leaving this part white. And the rest can be painted in. And by this time, the water is probably already evaporated by now, so continue to add water and make sure it's nice and smooth. And the reason why watercolor is also really popular is because it's the closest that you can get to make your work look more like Copic markers. Now, when I say Copic markers, I mean like the really expensive markers that you find that a lot of artists use for traditional art. That's way too expensive for you guys if you want to go cheap. However, if you have the budget, go and get some Copic markers. However, just know that Copic markers aren't what makes you good, it's the skill. So I would say, improve on how to use colors more, and then use Copics rather than start off with Copics and then expect your work to look good. Because I know a lot of people who try to use Copics and then their work ends up looking like absolute garbage. Not to be mean or anything, but they just don't look good because they just treat it like a plaything. Like they treat it like, rather than the tool, they treat it like they just treat it like a magic tool and use it like how you would cheap markers. Copic markers are really expensive, so take care of them really well. And the more you learn how to use it, the better it'll be. So notice I'm also putting in a little bit of pigment on the top of the hair here. That's a good thing to do if you want to add a little bit of like ombre to your hair. So I'm adding that just because it looks cute. And I'm also adding a little bit more pigment along the ends of the hair as well, because I don't want this to like look I don't want this to look too weird. I want there to be kind of like a solid boundary. So there's like some nice pop of color up here, and there's also color that starts from the top as well. So it's not just like color to no color, it's color to no color and then to color again. So if you want to, do that, I think that looks really good. Now, of course, people do watercolor differently here. I just keep, making sure it's nice and replenished, by the way. So if you want more pigment, put more pigment, but make sure if you don't want it to be too harsh, add some water. And I'm also using this here so I can like kind of control how much color I have. So kind of go back and forth. This is all really just a process. And this brush is really good for some nice shape control. So like for instance, if you use a super wide brush, you won't get clean lines like this. You'll end up getting a kind of weird marks on your paper. So this nice sharp tip will help you with, putting in like little details or little kind of getting into the little corners really nicely. So we have our base pretty much done. Now what we can do is we can start kind of layering in the values. So I'm still going to be using the same 197 just to keep darkening some areas here. So like some areas like the head here, that's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to use some water and just stretch it out a little bit. And I'm going to stretch it out across the head so it's not wasted. And then I'm going to use some water and then I'm going to blend in between. And I'm leaving out the highlights. I'm not coloring in where the highlights were marked. So then it looks, really, really nice, actually. This is actually looking quite nice. Nicer than I expected, actually. And then kind of color in between the cracks. So that is a good start on where to color in your hair. So that's a good base color for now. And I'm going to also just do the same thing on the other side. Just kind of add more color. So it kind of looks more like a fox now that I see the reddish kind of brown on her. It's supposed to be a corgi, but no, she turned into a fox. So the darker the back is, the more it will push out the neck and the head and everything else. So be sure to make sure that part is extra dark. Not too dark though, not like black dark. And also another thing is do not use black to mix when it comes to watercolor like this because it makes it look really desaturated. It'll make it look gray and gross. So try not to do that. So if your water starts getting really dirty at this point, change it. Mine is still relatively clean, so I'm going to continue doing this. So now I'm going to go ahead and take a 0.71 here, and I'm going to mix it with my 197 here, and that's just to create a nice rich kind of brown that's a little bit more on the yellow side. So I'm going to take this pigment and then I'm going to mix it in here, and that will create a nice kind of rich clay terracotta looking kind of color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just go ahead and start painting once again. So I'm going to start painting in between the cracks now. So rather than covering everything now, I'm going to just be painting in specific areas, such as, kind of in between, kind of in the cracks of the strands here, and that's just to add a little bit of value. So I feel like this part would need it. Show form. If you want to blend a little bit, you can. So this can be blended a little bit. You can also add a little bit of shapes into the hair as well. So adding it in areas like the hair here, just to show that, this is kind of like a 3D object, is a good move. I'm adding a little bit more color around these bangs here, these side bangs here. They look like little foxtails. It's actually kind of cute. I like that. So have fun with your drawings, of course, as always. And adding different strands of color helps. So notice how my strands aren't very small either. They're kind of like medium sized, and that's because I like to kind of keep them spaced out just so they don't look too cluttered. So that's just my personal opinion though. If you want to make them more like tight, knit together, like this, be my guest, although just be careful. I like to kind of go with bigger areas and simpler looking hair. That's just my opinion though. So as you can see, I'm applying a little bit more color around the back just because I wanted to contrast with the head and everything else. If you want to kind of take out the color and just apply it here, you can. So I added water and then just took some of the pigment off of here and then you reuse the paint. That's another good move that you guys can do. And then I'm going to add a little bit more pigment around the ears. And that is pretty much it for the hair. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.